Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2, and we will cover two verses today, 29 and 30. In fact, verse 30, I will only go through the meanings, but a general introduction to human being itself, that we will go through that. The story of man, setting scene for the arrival of Adam on earth. And these are the references. With regard to today's presentation, these two references are important, the human self and Iblis, and the meanings of the Quran, volume 2. The excerpts are taken from this volume. And this is our contact. First verse 29 of Surah Al-Baqarah, planet Earth and its resources are for the whole of humanity. هو الذي خلق لكم ما في الأرض جميعا ثم استوى إلى السماء فسواهن سبع سماوات وهو بكل شيء عليم. This law is established by that Allah, who, when He created you on this earth, also provided the means of sustenance for you at the same time. If you remember in verse 28, Quran had talked about death. That is death before we come to this world, that is the death like life. And then we are born in this world, and then we go through this life, and then we die, and then there is another life. So we should keep that background in mind. Then reflect on the vastness of the universe, with what balance and proportion the numerous stellar bodies are busily functioning and carrying out their respective duties. This is also taking place according to the law of Allah. According to the law of that Allah who is well aware of the hidden properties and demands of everything. As we know that the Quran continuously talks about the laws, principles, values, and then it says that establish your system within the values given in the Quran, and then you will have all the benefits which are associated with those values. This universal system of the heavens and earth is busily functioning so that the outcomes of the deeds of human beings become precisely established. In order to understand this reality, it is necessary to first of all fully understand the characteristics of man and his stature in the universe. This is described in an allegorical style in the story of Adam, which is in fact the story of man himself. Some further reflections on this verse. After pointing to the continuity of human life by addressing man as you, in this verse the Quran has mentioned the aspect of getting the earth and the means of sustenance ready before the arrival of Adam, that is man. And that reference is to the verse 30. Addressing mankind, it is pointed out that all the things found on planet Earth form part of the creative program of Allah, and that these are for the benefit of all of you. We have gone through this aspect previously as well, that there is a very concrete plan of Allah as far as man is concerned on planet Earth. And we are going through the outline of that program of Allah as given in the Quran. For this, attention is drawn to the creative aspect of the heavens, i.e. the outer universe of which the earth is also a part. The term Sabah Samawat is commonly translated as the seven heavens. If I remember, we had a presentation back in 2020, I think at the beginning of 2021, and we can have a look on that. What I'll do is I'll note down the link to that presentation. In the Arabic language, sabun is the digit of 7. But since this digit is viewed by them as a perfect number, therefore they also use it to mean many or numerous. Hence, Sabah Samawat will mean numerous heavenly bodies. 7 is not a perfect number in English. I had a look on it, but in Arabic, they consider it as a perfect number. The root of istawa is given here, which means for something to be in complete balance within its own self. In the verse, it will mean, and then he turned his attention towards Samawat and created numerous planets therein. Extreme balance and proportion are to be found in them. So in this verse, Quran is pointing to the beauty of the external universe and its harmony, how it is functioning in balance, and there are laws working over there. So Quran is telling us that your word should also be based on those laws and principles which are given in the Quran. Next is verse 30, the story of the arrival of Adam, that is man and mankind. وَإِذَا قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً قَالُوا أَتَجْعَلُ فِيهَا مَن يُفْسِدُ فِيهَا وَيَسْفِكُ الدِّمَاءَ وَنَحْنُ نُسَبِّحُ بِحَمْدِكَ وَنُقَدِّسُ لَكَ قَالَ إِنِّي أَعْلَمُ مَا لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. The word Khalifa I have highlighted over here, but this will be discussed in our subsequent presentations. When life, traversing its evolutionary stages, reached the human form, and according to the program of Mashiach, that moment arrived that man inhabits the earth in place of the former habitations. So a lot took place on this planet Earth before the arrival of the man. The universal forces, which are called Malaika, were astonished because before this there was no such creation in the universe which could dare to go against the laws of Allah. But this latest creation was being made the possessor of choice and intent, which meant that he, that is man, could also disobey the laws of Allah. Hence they, that is Malaika, the universal forces, respectfully submitted that, O Allah, what kind of creation is this which is being settled on earth? He will rebel against your law, whose consequence will be iniquities and bloodshed. Contrary to this, we are those who, whatever duties are assigned to us, always remain busy in the accomplishment of these, and we go to whatever extent is required in order to make your program the reason for praise, admiration, and glorification. At this, the creator of the universe, that is Allah, declared that you cannot understand this latest program of ours. We know all this. So a lot is said in this verse, and we will deal with that in our next presentation. The first slide, something about man, the human being. So in general, we will explore that what man is and how the evolution brought us at this stage where we are today. The birth of a human child has become as ordinary and routine an event for us today, just like the rising and setting of the sun. But when man, chained in the links of cause and effect, turns the pages of the book of creation backwards, then it is natural for his astonished gaze to be arrested at that point, which he calls the first link in the process of the creation of man. And it is a fact that all of us at some point in time think that how did we come to this world in the first place? That is, nowadays we know through a biological process a child is born, and then we go through various stages of our biological life. On reaching this valley of amazement, he is awestruck as how did the very first human being come into existence. In its era of infancy, the human mind could not think of anything beyond somehow or other sculpting an individual and then to produce its pair from this. When man and woman come into existence in this way, then no difficulty will remain in comprehending the procreation of the human race. So human beings thought that let us somehow create a man and a woman, and then the things will become easier because then we can understand the biological process. So the religious books are full of these kind of assumptions that how the first man came into existence. Thus, in nearly every religion of the world, this is generally what is described in connection with the first man. We will present details about this later in the story of Adam. Here we are talking about a human being. We have written in volume 1 of the meanings of the Quran that leaving man to one side, even up until today, all the scholars of the world have not yet been able to decipher this fact that how did the universe itself come into existence. We have heard about these kind of theories, the Big Bang ones, but they are all speculative. They all are not sure that what was the first cause of the creation of the universe. They have said a great deal, though, about how after its initiation, by undergoing various transformations and passing through all kinds of valleys of change, it eventually reached this stage where we find it in existence today. but how its first form became initiated. Where did those elements come from through whose transformations it advanced forward in this way? In reply to this question, even the most renowned scientist today is just as much in awe as the man of 6,000 years ago was, or a present day uneducated peasant. So at least there is an equality over there that the most thinking scientist is also helpless to find out how did the universe begin. Some reflection on the question of life on earth. Where did life come from? No one has been able to provide an answer to this question, although Darwin told us where its first manifestation occurred from, i.e., where do we see the manifestation of life in its initial form. Now we refer to Darwin because that is well documented now. But I'm sure that even during the Muslim era, all these things were looked at and someone somewhere should have put it down in writing. But those books, since are not accessible now, so everything goes back to Darwin in 19th century. Research into this informs us that the first life cell, that is protoplasm, originated in the sea because the cell contains the same types and proportions of minerals as are found in seawater. When seawater melded with the mud on its banks, from this that first cell came into existence in which life appears before us in its initial form. And we know about this unicellular life now quite well. In this cell, there was no distinction yet of male and female. Thus, it is called a unicellular organism in scientific terminology. The Quran uses the term nafs-e-wahida, that is single cell, for this. After this, the process of evolution began. Due to its potential for growth, the nafs-e-wahida became divided into two parts, out of which one part adopted the male form and the other the female form, and in this way, the process of life forms began to advance. As it advanced, this process spread out into different branches. One of these branches being that of the animal species. This same process of evolution advanced one step further and life adopted the human form. The next slide is every aspect of the creation follows laws of Allah. In relation to the beginning of the system of the universe and its evolutionary stages, the Quran has described one principle which is the focal point of this discussion. The Quran states, the state of divine schemes is that in their latent form, these are at the highest point in the knowledge of Allah. When the aim is to bring any of these schemes into action, then according to the law of Mashiach, its initiation is from the lowest points of the earth. And this is very interesting. We should keep in mind that everything starts from the smallest and then it grows higher and higher. And this is the same situation in terms of establishing the system of Deen. Then traversing its evolutionary stages, that scheme keeps rising up towards a state of completion. These stages are traversed through extremely prolonged intervals whose each period is of thousands and thousands of years according to your count and tally. Because evolution is spread over quite a long period of time. All this keeps taking place according to the law of that Allah who is aware of the present state of everything and also with its latent potentials. So our job is to try to find out those latent potentials in everything around us in a short finite time span so that we can understand the process of creation and then benefit from those latent potentials and kept within various things. His law of Mashiach possesses sufficient power that it can take everything to its point of completion by providing suitable nourishment. And that is what Rububiyat means. It is stated here about these stages that they are spread over thousands and thousands of years. In another verse, it is stated that in some cases they can also last 50,000 of years. According to this same system of evolution of Allah, He has stated that life began from water. In Surah Al-Anbiya, it is stated that we made every living thing from water, which is a fact. Will these people not then acknowledge this reality? And after this, declare that Allah has complete control over this fountainhead of life. Getting education from the Quran means that we understand a lot about the process of creation. And as the science will progress further, many verses of the Quran will become more clear. Origin of life on the planet Earth. After this, mentioned those evolutionary stages by passing through which life has reached the human form. In this connection, it is noted that he began the creation of man with clay, and clay is called teen here. In another place, the word turab has been mentioned in place of teen. Teen or turab was inanimate matter. When water was mixed with it, it became teen lazub, i.e. sticky clay. In Surah Al-Safat, it is stated that them have we created out of a sticky clay, because that is the place from where the unicellular life originated. The Quran has also elucidated that the mixing of water and clay, i.e. the state of this mud, was not such that the clay in this became converted into life. What he has stated is that when the essence of this clay made contact with water, then the very first cell of life made its appearance from this. Hence, it is stated in Surah Al-Mu'minun, man we did create from a quintessence of clay. In this verse, the words quintessence of clay merit profound reflection. When we sow a seed in the ground, then by drawing those elements from the soil on which its nourishment is dependent, it absorbs these into itself. These same elements, that is salts, minerals, etc., which are found in the soil, will be called quintessence of clay. And in Quran's words is sulalatin min teen. The first life cell came into existence from this kind of quintessence of clay. Allah's creation is based on balance and proportion. And that is an important point, that from wherever the life started, it progressed forward based on Allah's laws of evolution. So it is not something which is not directed, because people like Darwin and those scientists who are strong believer of evolution, they think all of this has taken place in its own right. There is no one guiding it through various stages. The Quran has briefly noted that together with this mixture of clay and water, there was also the requirement for heat, but a specific balance or proportion was absolutely essential in these constituent elements. If that proportion is not maintained, then that mud will dry out and become a solid block. We created man from risen mud, whose form was such that if there was an increase of heat in it, then it would have rung like pottery. But we created a particular balance in these constituents so that the first life cell came into existence from this. So it means that the life which got created as a unicellular form from clay and mud was not at random. It was extremely well planned and followed a certain law of growth and evolution put down by Allah. The Quran has termed this as nafs-e-wahida, that is single nafs, i.e. such a cell in which there was no distinction of male and female. It was single, i.e. one unit. Allah is that being who provided you nourishment from a single cell. Then he established various stages for you so that you stay at one stage for a defined duration, and this stage hands you over to the next stage, so that in this way, traversing different stages, you reach the human form. It's very important that we reflect on this aspect of various stages, because we as human beings, we are also going through this stage of our phase of life, and then this stage or phase of life will hand us over to the next life after our death. The fact is that we have described our laws of life clearly and perspicuously, but only those people can comprehend them who use their intellect and reasoning. About these same phases and destinations, it is declared at another place that truly you have reached to this stage having gone through modifications from one state into another state, and after this will keep on advancing forward and rising higher. Regarding these same changes and transformations and evolutionary stages, The Quran has said, He created you in such a way that you reached here, transmuting through your way of acting. وَقَدْ خَلَقَكُمْ أَطْوَارًا, that you are going through various stages of your own conduct. And you're watching it. As we live our life, we know how we progress further till we die. Next is single cell containing life advances forward. We have said above that regarding the process of evolution, scientific investigation has informed us that there was no differentiation of male and female in the very first cell of life which emerged. Following this cell divided into two parts due to its potential for growth. One of these parts adopted the form of a male and the other one that of a female. Therefore, it appears that this pair came into existence from this same nafs-e wahida, that is single cell. Hence, it is stated in the Quran, your Rabb is the same one who created you from a single cell and from this created its pair also. Furthermore, the Quran has not just declared about man that his mate was created from a single cell, it has declared that, and we have made pairs of everything. We have considered it important to mention these matters so that you can bear in mind the harmony of the divine law. Today, scientific discoveries are unfolding this reality that wherever there is life, for example, flora and fauna, there are pairs that exist there. Though in the initial stages of life, the potential for the continuation of species is found within one cell. When life advances a bit further, then the process of male and female is visible at every point. Since this issue is not related to the topic under our consideration, we do not wish to enter into its details. Because over here we can, if we have interest in this direction, we can read some books on evolution and we'll come to some understanding that how the human beings have reached in their understanding up to this point in time. Biological mode of creating life through reproduction. The Quran has also informed us that the emergence of life was from turab, i.e. soil, but on evolving further, it expanded into different species in the way that the branches of a tree spread out in different directions. When experts in the process of evolution describe different species of life, they present it using the model of a tree also. It is noted in the Quran about these species that they include those organisms which creep on their bellies, also those that walk on two legs, and some that are four-legged. In addition, also birds which fly. And all of this is given in the Quran. It is declared about all these that they are also ummas, that is communities like those of yours. Just to reflect in how many different ways the Quran has explained to us the unity of the reality of life. So for us, it is important to understand that wherever we are in the world today, there is a purpose behind our creation and that our life will not be wasted if we follow the values of the Quran and then leave this world. Traversing through these stages of creation, life arrived at that stage where the continuation of the race is through sexual reproduction, i.e. it occurs via semen. In common terminology, this is called the animalistic level. In Surah Al-Sajdah, it is noted that, and then made his, that is man's progeny, from a quintessence of the nature of a weak fluid. In another place, this is called a sperm drop. The Quran has also noted at different places what kinds of stages and what forms the fetus passes through, which comes into existence from the sperm drop in the mother's womb. For example, it is stated, we began the creation of man from the quintessence of clay, that is inanimate matter. Then this creative program of ours reached that link where the continuation of the species takes place via procreation. In this way, we made it a drop of sperm which became established in a place of rest in the female's womb, that is where the fertilization takes place, firmly fixed. Then turned this fertilized egg into a leech-like clot, the words used are alka, and then turned this alka into a lump of flesh. Then we raised a skeleton of bones in it and then covered it with a layer of flesh. The next slide is two examples of the trees of life. what I've done is I've taken these two from Google, and I thought this is quite interesting. Now, this is one tree of life which I found over there, and we can see there are basically these unicellular life over here, and then it branches off, and we can see viruses over here, and we can place the man-made virus also as part of this virus. And then we go through it, and then we reach these mammals over here: birds, reptiles, amphibians, fish, vertebrates. So this is how the whole thing has evolved over a period of centuries, and Quran is pointing to that. So the issue for us is that how to make use of our life as we go forward. And of course, it is good to have some kind of good impression how we reached here as human beings. And man is over here. And the second one is quite interesting. The first one is a bit more detailed. This one over here, we can see man is over here, and next to it is ape. And before that is a horse, and all these various species. And again, it starts from a single cell. We have a finite stay, that is time on the planet, and then we leave all this behind. So the issue before us is how to get the best out of our own life, our own conduct, individually as well as collectively. Human beings are more than just animals, and that is another important point to understand from today's presentation. In a similar context, it is stated in Surah Al-Hajj, we initiated your birth from inanimate matter, then traversing through different stages, this matter reached that stage where the continuation of the species takes place via reproduction. And the sperm remains in the mother's womb, then it becomes like a leech-like clot, then becomes a partly formed and partly unformed morsel of flesh. It passes through these stages in order that all the potentials which were present in a latent form in the embryo are manifested by gradually becoming nourished. And we cause it to remain in the wombs for an appointed term as per the law of Mashiach, that is the law of Allah. Then do we bring you out into the world in the form of an alive child. So we go through as a child from initial conception to being born. These are those stages through which not only the human child, but every offspring of an animal passes through in the material womb. And this is certainly true for mammals. Therefore, up to this point, there is no difference between a man and an animal. Having reached this point in their research, Western thinkers came to a halt and concluded that man also came into existence like other animals according to the physical laws of nature. And it's interesting, if we go through their books, they still think that human beings basically are an advanced form of animals and their life is not of much meaning. He lives his life according to these same laws, and then death overcomes him in accordance with these also. And the way in which the end of other animals occurs through death, the end of man also occurs in a similar way. Brain dead, human beings dead. And that is the way the scientists view the existence of human beings and their own existence. So much so that by analyzing the human body, they have also described what kinds of elements it is constituted from. The next slide is some important constituents of the human body. Is that all there is to being human? And we can see over here, I have again taken it from Google, human body elements. There's the 4% of the brain over here. And then 3.2% is nitrogen, 9.5% is hydrogen, 18.5% is carbon, 65% is oxygen, and then these are various elements. And this is another one, and it has one added carbohydrates over here of 1%. So what human beings in the scientific field think that human body is the one which defines these human beings, and human beings are slightly advanced form of animals. Next slide is man just a physical being, i.e. just existing under the domain of physical laws? If this research of theirs had remained confined within physics, that too would have been fine. But here another difficulty raised its head, which the famous religious scholar F.J. Sheen has expressed in these words. What I've done is that I've quoted some of these excerpts from the book because I thought it is good to get some kind of an impression of what people in the West or people who are in the scientific field but do not have Iman in the Quran, how do they think? How do they conclude their own existence? It is a fact which can be verified from history that whenever there is some big change in the scientific viewpoint, then together with this, such thinkers emerge who desire that a change should also be created with the fundamental and immutable truths according to this same viewpoint. When in the 18th century, a new concept was established about the domain of the universe due to the Newtonian doctrine, then together with this, a demand also arose that the world should get a new religion too. Because at that time in the West, people were fed up with the Christianity, and whatever they found in the Bible was not scientifically supported. As a result, a new religion took birth according to this, due to which it was demanded that ethics, literature, and metaphysics should change their fundamental principles and elements so that these can come into line with the scientific viewpoint. So they tried to come to some kind of a conclusion how to merge religious belief system and scientific point of view, and we can see how successful they have been and what mess they have created in the world. This was the consequence of the research by Newton about the external universe and according to the research of Darwin. The result was that there are no laws other than the laws of nature, nor any other source of knowledge. And this is the conclusion they had, that the human intellect alone is capable enough to devise its own path of life. And that is where we are now in the world. The physical life of man will be lived according to the laws of nature, and his social life according to those laws which man himself devises. And laws of nature they could not deny because they were getting benefits out of it, all the physical laws. And they could not simply deny, but they do not relate it back to the Creator, that is to Allah. And as a result, they find it impossible to come to the Quran. And this is the state of the Muslim world as well. At the end of the 19th century, this concept took the shape of a movement which is called the rationalist movement. The association of this movement presented its definition in 1895 in these words, and they haven't moved much forward since 1895. The meaning of intellectualism is that inclination of the mind according to which the human intellect is taken to be functioning at the highest level without any boundaries and limits, and its purpose is that such a foundation is laid for such philosophy and ethics whose criterion for truth is purely the human intellect, and it should not recognize any authority. So human beings hate authority, particularly people in power and those who have wealth. And as a result, the others just follow them. And this is an important point to keep in mind, that without the Quran, there are no limits to human life, and they think that they are free to do whatever they wish to do. So there is no accountability. And we have gone through this aspect previously as well. Next is opinion about human life without guidance. This new religion is defined using the term secularism, whose extreme form appears before us in the form of Marxism. Thus, Lenin writes in this regard, the meaning of materialism, that is secularism, is that we accept that external reality is only that which we determine through our senses. The human intellect is capable of this, that it can provide us with knowledge about the absolute truth. Hence, it has supplied this knowledge. And they are still struggling to find out the absolute truth. And if we go through some of these clips in YouTube on truth, we will see that how their definitions vary among their own selves. Have you noticed where the tentacles of pure physical research have been linked to? In other words, according to this research, it was claimed that Wahi, that is the revelation, Risalat, the messengerhood, the permanent values, the life of the hereafter, are all tales of the ancients, that they have no existence. Man is an animal with just this difference, that he can formulate the decisions of life according to his intellect. And that is where the majority of the word is at this point in time. The fundamental error of man is that he views every research of his as the final word. And this is a very interesting sentence noted over here, that human beings, once they discover something or they form certain opinion and they also hold power, then they think they are the most intelligent, highly intellectual person in the world at that point in time. That egoistic feeling within them think that they have found the truth. And that is why there are problems then, and they never try to think that they have only got a glimpse of some aspect of their living. Even though if he paused a while and allowed his research to progress further, then the weakness of his earlier research will become apparent to him of itself. And we see it continuously in the scientific field, that once one discovery is made, then they find out that there are certain flaws in that discovery, and there is far more to that discovery than what they have found at that point in time. We go to the next slide, a few more comments on the aspect of being human. Consequently, the echo of this physical doctrine had not yet faded when from this same West, these kinds of voices, for example, of A.V. Hill, began to be heard in our ears, in which it was stated, "I do not wish to state before you today that the problem of life can be made to be understood through present-day physics and chemistry. No matter how intellectually astute the instructor may be, this is just not possible. I do not wish to make speculations about whether this will be possible through knowledge of physics and chemistry of the future. When events of the science of physics become unspecified, when chemistry itself becomes physics, at that time the situation will become something different. But until that time, I will keep reiterating, in line with Haldane, that when we observe knowledge of life as a whole, then a completely new situation appears before us. And that is the problem, that unless we look at the purpose of human life as a whole, rather than look at it in bits and pieces, we simply cannot come to the truth or haqq. And this is what Quran does. It presents the reality of our existence as a whole. Such a situation whose unity and fundamental nature is just as important as any other concept of physics. In the words of the renowned Russian author Ouspensky, our science can tell us nothing about life and its beginning. So that is conclusive from his side. This puzzle remains as a mystery. There is something within a living body, a living cell, a living protoplasm which cannot be comprehended. This is that incomprehensible entity which differentiates living matter from non-living matter. So he is differentiating between life and things which do not have life. We become aware of this only through its function. What he's saying is that we should look at what is the function, what is the purpose of it, and how it is behaving. While we are looking at the constitution of it as well and exploring that part, we should also look at the purpose of that creation, and that is what the Quran does. Instead of going into the chemistry and physics of it, it is telling us that you have a finite time in this world and this is your purpose, so try to get maximum out of your life. The most important of its functions is self-reproduction. This thing is not found in a non-living body, dead cell, and in dead matter. So he is calling it the most important function of reproduction, which is a biological process. A living body keeps multiplying itself infinitely, and for this keeps absorbing the non-living matter within it. This is that act of life whose nature cannot be explained. But this much is certain, that this belief of materialists is absolutely wrong, that life is the outcome of the mechanical forces. So at least he is saying that it is not the mechanical forces through which human beings have been created or life has been created. There is more to life than merely a mechanical process. The opinion of the Quran. There is far more given in volume 2. And I leave it once that is published, we can go through it in our own time. From these courses, we'll have observed that the West itself has turned towards this direction, that life does not come into existence through mechanistic changes in non-living matter. It is the consequence of the functioning of some other constituent. The way in which life is a totally different and distinct link in the chain from previous mechanical links of matter, in the same way when life adopts the human form from the animalistic form, there too this segment becomes completely unique from its former links. And this is very interesting because human beings, if they are animals, then their brain should have been quite similar to the brains of monkeys and apes, because that is the nearest species people link to. But we have this ability of thinking about thinking, and that step change they simply cannot understand. And the only way to understand that is to come to the Quran. In order to understand this reality, let us turn to the Quran again. After noting verses, we had written that the last words of this verse have been deliberately omitted. Bring to mind again the words of that verse and its translation, and then recall that place where the Quran states that in the mother's womb, the bones of the fetus are clothed with flesh. The stages up to this point were common between the human fetus and animals. After this, regarding the human fetus, it is stated, then we turned man into a completely new and different form of creation. Then see how Allah's law of creation is the possessor of how many great possibilities. And it is from this respect that He is the best among those who create. So if we go through this verse 23:14, we will see that first the stages of formation of human fetus are mentioned. And then Quran says, then it turned out to be a different creation. And then Quran says, Tabarakallahu ahsanul khaliqeen. And it's quite interesting because that is the stage where then child gets its ability to choose and intent. And that choice and intent is induced into it or is added to his personality. Next is man receives divine energy to become the possessor of choice and intent. Here Allah has called himself Ahsanul Khaliqeen, the best of those who create. So this child who is given now choice and intent, it has also become a creator in its own right before or after he arrives in this world. And regarding the distinct status of man, it is stated in another place that we have surely created man with the possibilities of balanced potentials. What is this completely different kind of creation in which man is totally unique, i.e., which has not been bestowed on any other creation? The Quran has used a unique term for this. In Surah Al-Sajdah, the various creative stages of man are firstly listed, and after this it is stated, the common translation of which is, and we breathe nafakhna into him our ruh. That is, Allah breathed that is the divine energy from his side. Ruh means his divine energy. And that is the one which has given us the ability of choosing and decision making. And this is something which science cannot figure out. They have to come to the Quran. This characteristic belongs only to man. This has not been declared about any other creation that Allah breathed his ruh into it. The meaning of ruh is energy. Therefore, by nafakh, it is meant that man has been conferred with that kind of energy or power which has not fallen into the share of any other creation. And we should keep in mind that this ruh is not part of Allah, because Allah is has fully developed personality, is fully developed being. Whereas this ruh is in a raw form, it comes to us so that we then develop this divine energy that is through this ruh we get our self, and this self has the ability, has certain latent potentials which we then develop as we live our life. We have gone over it a few times before as well. Therefore, by nafakh it is meant that man has been conferred with that kind of energy or power which has not fallen into the share of any other creation. By reflecting a bit more deeply, this reality will be comprehended that this power is that of choice and intent. In the whole of the universe, that is the visible universe as far as we know, this power is either possessed by Allah or by man, that is conferred by him. This is why Allah has described it as Ruhi or Ruhana, that is divine energy. In other words, man has not been created constrained like other creations. he has been created as the possessor of choice and intent. And this is a big step change, which people simply, those who do not have access to the Quran and do not understand these verses, simply cannot comprehend that from where this choice and intent comes to us. Which means that when two possibilities appear before him, he has been given the authority to select and adopt whichever path he desires between these two for himself. Aside from him, no other creation has been given such authority. So over here we should pause and reflect and understand that Quran is pointing our attention to something extremely important which is kept within each human child. And that ability to choose and decision making is built into him through this divine energy. And this divine energy is the one which is need to be then developed further. It has the potential to be developed through our acts, through our thinking, through our iman and solid deeds. To conclude this presentation, everything in the universe that is inanimate and animate is constrained to follow that path for which it has been created. And that is part of Allah being Rabb, that Allah has defined a destination for everything which He has created. And in the case of man, only man is exempted from this. That entity in man which has been conferred with this power is termed nafs by the Quran. So in the case of man, we do not have any inbuilt guidance within us. We have to use the guidance of the Quran in order to develop our self. And that self is based on this divine energy which has been breathed into every child. This is what is called the human self or personality. Today's psychologists have coined a modern term, psyche, for this. The Quran has described the characteristics of the human psyche in great detail. The reality is that this is the foremost point of distinction between kufr and iman, or haq and batil. In other words, one concept of life is that man is just the name for an extended form of the animals who remains alive under the domain of the physical laws of nature and comes to an end one day according to these same laws. The Quran terms this concept as kufr. It is stated in Surah Muhammad, those people who eat and drink like animals and profit from other physical benefits and consider only this to be the aim of life, live a life of kufr. So we can come to this conclusion from this presentation that we have this divine energy which has given us the ability to make choices in life. And the Quran is helping us to make those choices which help to develop ourselves, and also we can come together and create a system of deen within the permanent values of the Quran. Because this divine energy, realizing that we have that divine energy, it becomes imperative on us to understand this fact and then to come to this conclusion that I want to get the best out of the self which has been bestowed on me from the direction of Allah. In another place it is stated, the belief of these people is that life is only the life of this world. Those who are to die, die in this. And that is, if we are thinking like that, then we are essentially denying that we are the holders or the possessors of this divine energy. And new children are continually being born with new life. This is the circle of life which just continues like this. With the passage of time, man's life ends. That is, human beings are only physical. Once the brain is dead, human beings are dead. The fact is that these people have no knowledge of the truth and reality about human beings. It is merely on the basis of superficial knowledge that they resort to these kinds of conjectures. So we can see from this brief presentation that our life is extremely important because we are the possessor of this divine energy. And it is through this divine energy that we have a self, we have this rational thinking, that we make use of our intellect and our emotions and our decision making and direct our desires and needs within the guidance of the Quran. And that means we should try to get the best out of the Quran so that individually and collectively we get best out of our life, and we are able to, and we work towards the system of deen so that our efforts at some future time materialize and come to fruition. Thanks for your time and for sharing this today. Please feel free to share it with your contacts. You may like to subscribe for future talks related to the Quranic system of Deen.